Saddam Hussein feared one thing more than America. When U.S. forces captured him, they didn't ask about weapons. They asked about the tablets, ancient tablets, alien-looking tablets. Why did a dictator hide 4,000-year-old writings in underground bunkers like they were nuclear launch codes? And why, when the world's most powerful army invaded Baghdad, were these clay texts taken first? Today, we uncover Saddam Hussein's obsession with ancient texts and the secrets that vanished with them. Iraq is the land of the first cities, the first laws, and the first kings. Sand stretches endlessly across the desert, hiding ruins older than the pyramids, older than written history itself. And among those ruins lie stories of beings who came from the sky, kings who ruled for thousands of years, and knowledge humanity was never meant to hold. Saddam Hussein didn't see Iraq as a modern nation. He saw it as a gate to the ancient world, a bridge to something older, deeper, and far more powerful than any government on earth. This is the story of a dictator who believed the past held a secret he wanted to control, a secret someone else wanted to take. Saddam Hussein was born in 1937 in a small village called Al-Auja outside Tikrit. He grew up in poverty, surrounded by violence and old tribal legends. But even as a child, he heard stories most boys never heard. Stories of Mesopotamian kings who ruled with divine power, stories of gods who descended from the sky, stories of civilizations wiped out by knowledge too dangerous for humans. These weren't bedtime stories. They were warnings, myths passed down by generations, living in the shadows of ancient ruins. As Saddam grew older, he became obsessed not just with power, but with legacy. He believed true power did not come from guns, soldiers, or money. It came from history, from the right to rule granted by the ancient kings of Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria. When Saddam joined the Ba'ath Party, he didn't just enter politics. He entered a path of myth-making, a path blurring the line between modern dictatorship and ancient destiny. By the 1970s, Saddam had risen high enough to reshape Iraq's identity. He rebuilt ancient cities, revived old ceremonies, and placed himself in the lineage of Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar. He ordered bricks stamped with his name inside walls, echoing Babylon's glory. Foreign leaders saw ego, but those inside Iraq knew something else. Saddam wasn't copying the ancient kings, he was trying to become one. And then the obsession grew deeper. Saddam began collecting something far more dangerous than monuments or statues. He began collecting texts, ancient clay tablets written in cuneiform, describing the oldest stories known to man, stories of strange beings descending from the sky, stories of rulers who lived for thousands of years, knowledge given to humans, and knowledge taken away. To most historians, these were myths. To archaeologists, cultural treasures. To Saddam, blueprints. Blueprints to divine kingship. Blueprints to power granted by forces beyond the human world. He believed the ancients left secrets buried under the sands of Iraq. Secrets only the chosen could understand. Secrets meant for him. By the early 1980s, Saddam had built something extraordinary. A nationwide network of excavations. Entire teams of archaeologists were given unlimited funding. Dig sites untouched for generations were reopened, villages relocated, highways rerouted, all to reach whatever treasure lay under the mounds. Saddam wanted tablets, not statues, not jewels, tablets. Especially tablets mentioning the Anunnaki, the sky beings, the ones described as descending from above, giving kings the right to rule, the ones Iraq's oldest legends whisper about. Some of the most secret translations were done inside Saddam's palaces. A few tablets never reached the museums at all. They were sent straight into underground vaults guarded by the Special Security Organization. Only a handful knew what they contained, and those who knew rarely spoke. Archaeologists whispered among themselves. They said Saddam believed the tablets contained dangerous knowledge, knowledge that could not fall into Western hands, knowledge proving his divine connection to the ancient kings. Some scholars claimed Saddam obsessed over the Sumerian king list, a document describing rulers who reigned not for decades, but for centuries, millennia. To the world, this was mythology. To Saddam, proof that ancient kings had access to something extraordinary, something not human. During the Iran-Iraq War, while the world focused on fighting, Saddam's teams continued digging. Even as bombs fell, excavations continued under military protection. Then came the Gulf War. UN inspectors entered Iraq expecting to find chemical labs, missile factories, nuclear sites. But something confused them. Certain buildings had locks stronger than military bunkers. Rooms filled with clay tablets were sealed tighter than weapons storage. And Saddam refused to open some vaults at all. Inspectors wrote strange notes. They are hiding something. But it wasn't weapons, not technology, not oil. It was history. History Saddam protected more fiercely than anything else. The reconstruction of Babylon itself was part of this mission. Every ceremony mirrored ancient rituals. Every inscription connected Saddam to kings who ruled before the Great Flood. He wanted continuity, a line of kings stretching from the gods of Sumer to him. By the late 1990s, entire government departments secretly cataloged, translated, and guarded these texts. Some translators later claimed they found references Saddam insisted on hiding, references about knowledge taken from humans, descended from the heavens, and lost in the time of the great kings. Whatever Saddam believed, it became obsession. And that obsession drew the attention of a very different power. April 2003, Baghdad is collapsing. Tanks roll through streets, explosions shake the old city, statues fall. But elsewhere in the city, a different mission begins. While the world watches soldiers move into bases, a smaller specialized force moves in silence. They aren't looking for missiles, not chemical labs, not nuclear facilities. They are looking for tablets. Soldiers carry pre-written lists of specific artifacts, rooms, vaults. They move faster than looters, faster than chaos. They know exactly what to take. Inside the Iraq Museum, glass cases are shattered. Looters run off with gold, statues, jewelry. But the most important collection's already gone, moved before anyone entered the building. The invasion of Baghdad wasn't just military. It was extraction of knowledge, of history, of something Saddam guarded more than his own life. By the time Baghdad falls, dozens of tablets, especially those tied to pre-flood kings, sky beings, the Anunnaki, have vanished into unknown hands. Saddam's obsession had become someone else's priority, and whatever secrets he saw in those tablets were no longer his. In the months after Baghdad fell, a strange silence spread across Iraq's archaeological world. Professors who once spoke openly now hesitated. Museum workers avoided cameras. Scholars who tried to ask questions were told to leave the past alone. And then the first rumors surfaced. Rumors that some of the most sensitive tablets, the ones Saddam hid in vaults, guarded like nuclear material, had disappeared completely. Not stolen, not broken, not looted, just gone. The earliest reports came from inside the National Museum. Former officials claimed that before U.S. troops entered, special teams had moved certain crates out under military escort. Others said intelligence agencies had lists of targeted artifacts before the invasion began. Archaeologists tried to track what had vanished. They found gaps, entire collections missing, not random, not general, specific. The tablets gone were the ones tied directly to the oldest myths, the Sumerian king list, the Enuma Elish creation tablets, tablets mentioning strange sky watchers, tablets describing a descent of knowledge from beings not of man. These weren't everyday artifacts. They were the ones Saddam personally locked away, the ones he believed carried power, the ones he feared in the wrong hands. And now they were exactly in the hands he feared. To understand why this was shocking, you need to know what these tablets described. They told of the Anunnaki, not as gods, but as powerful beings who came from above. They spoke of kings who ruled before the flood with lifespans beyond imagination. They suggested that kingship, authority itself, descended from heaven. To a dictator obsessed with legitimacy, these words were not mythology. They were instructions, proof that rule came not from elections or armies, but from ancient cosmic authority. Saddam was convinced that hidden among thousands of tablets were clues that could reveal why the earliest kings of Sumer lived so long, clues about knowledge lost in the flood, clues about technologies or rituals erased by time. He believed the ancients tapped into something humans once knew and forgot, or were forced to forget. Forced to. It wasn't just him. Throughout the 20th century, scholars, intelligence agencies, and world powers quietly watched Iraq's archaeology. They knew something unusual. Mesopotamia wasn't just old, it was the cradle of everything. Writing, law, mathematics, astronomy, kingship. Everything began there suddenly, too suddenly. For some, this was a mystery worth exploring. For Saddam, it became destiny. But to the world's intelligence community, Saddam's obsession with these texts was alarming. Not because of aliens, but because knowledge, ancient knowledge, shapes politics, shapes religion, shapes identity, control the story of creation, and you control everything built on top of it. And so, after Baghdad fell, the struggle over the tablets didn't end. It began. The U.S. military publicly stated that museum looting was unfortunate but unplanned. Behind closed doors, archaeologists noticed something strange. The most valuable gold pieces were recovered, but many tablets were not, especially those containing cosmological origins, pre-flood kings, and references to beings from the heavens. Some tablets surfaced unexpectedly in London, in Switzerland, in private collections no one could identify. Others appeared in auctions for hours, then vanished when governments asked questions. And then came the whisper that changed everything. A former Iraqi official told a foreign journalist, they wanted the tablets more than the weapons. Who they were, he never clarified. He didn't need to. Suddenly, everyone was asking the same question. Why would the world's strongest military prioritize ancient clay tablets? What was so important about these 4,000-year-old texts that they were treated like classified material? Some say it was simple: control of history, control of narrative, control of the world's oldest knowledge. But others believe something deeper, something that terrified Saddam, something that intrigued the powers that replaced him, something written long before religion, before kings, before civilization itself, something someone did not want the world to know. Investigators compiling missing artifact lists noticed a chilling pattern. The missing tablets weren't random. They centered on three themes: pre-flood civilizations, texts describing a world before the Great Flood, ruled by beings whose origins were not earthly, celestial beings and sky ancestors, writings describing knowledge brought from the heavens, beings with wings, fire, or impossible power, kingship bestowed from above, tablets emphasizing the right to rule came from the sky, not human authority. To many, these were myths. To Saddam, they were real. And to intelligence agencies, they were dangerous, not because of supernatural claims, but because of their power over belief. Knowledge is the strongest weapon. Control the past, and you shape the future. The strangest reports came from translators who had worked under Saddam. One claimed a set of tablets found near ancient Ur contained a story Saddam ordered sealed immediately. It spoke of a cycle where knowledge rises, then is destroyed, then rises again, a cycle controlled by watchers from above. Another translator said Saddam believed he found references to a weapon of the gods, not a literal weapon, but knowledge, granting unstoppable authority. Was it technology, ritual, symbolic? No one knows. The tablet containing the key passages is missing. Today, Iraq is still recovering from decades of war, destruction, and loss. Museums remain damaged, archives remain incomplete, thousands of artifacts are still missing. But the most important question remains unanswered. Where are the tablets Saddam feared? Some were confirmed taken by coalition forces for protection. Others smuggled out during chaos. Some appeared and vanished on the black market. And a handful have never been seen again. Even more disturbing, the tablets tied specifically to the Anunnaki, to pre-flood kings, to civilization's origins, are the hardest to track. Scholars quietly admit a strange truth. No one knows what happened to them, not Iraq, not museums, not even international organizations meant to protect cultural history. Saddam Hussein wasn't just reading the past, he was preparing for something. Because once he got those tablets, he immediately began reconstructing ancient Babylon. Not symbolically, not for tourism, but brick by brick, like trying to wake something up. His workers rebuilt temples, restored ziggurats, reopened ceremonial gates. On every brick, Saddam stamped, in the era of Saddam Hussein, protector of Iraq, Babylon rises again. Why would a modern dictator resurrect the capital of the gods who came from the sky? Why call himself Nebuchadnezzar, reincarnated? Why care so much about ancient rituals? The answer becomes terrifying when you see who he invited next. A Paris-based team of experts specializing in Mesopotamian star maps. Not historians, not linguists, star maps. These maps weren't normal. They were diagrams of constellations aligned with ancient landing sites carved into Sumerian tablets. Saddam asked one question: when will the gods return? Experts didn't know. The regime didn't want interpretations. They wanted dates. Meanwhile, deep under the rebuilt palaces, Iraqi intelligence stored strange artifacts. Bronze tools with unknown symbols, fragments of tablets referencing beings of shining metal, clay seals showing tall figures with helmets and tubes. Mythology? Or something Saddam believed real? The CIA noticed something disturbing. Saddam's rockets, underground bunkers, classified excavation zones, built exactly on sites mentioned in Sumerian creation myths. It was like building a message system, a receiving station, or a fortress protecting something beneath. U.S. analysts were confused. This wasn't preparing for war, it was preparing for an arrival. In 2001, 2 years before the Iraq invasion, satellite images caught something impossible. A massive sealed chamber beneath the reconstructed Babylon Palace. A chamber not on any blueprint, large enough for an object the size of an aircraft. Nobody knew what was inside. Saddam called it the Room of the Visitors. The world thought he was hiding weapons of mass destruction, but he was hiding something much older, much more dangerous, and not from this world. When the U.S. invasion began in March 2003, the world watched missiles strike Baghdad and tanks roll through the desert. Behind the chaos, a quieter race began. Not for oil, not for weapons, but for history. American intelligence received classified instructions: secure archaeological sites first. Most soldiers didn't understand. They were trained to seize military targets, not museums. But someone high above decided Iraq's ancient past was suddenly a national security priority. One location became the obsession of multiple agencies: the Iraq National Museum, the same place Saddam had turned into his private vault for rare tablets. The underground rooms were rumored to hide the forbidden Sumerian artifacts no outsider had cataloged. But when U.S. forces reached Baghdad, the museum had already been breached. Looters stormed the building, smashing display cases, tearing open boxes, dragging out what they could. But this wasn't normal looting. Witnesses said the crowd moved with precision, heading straight to sealed rooms ordinary Iraqis never knew existed. In less than 48 hours, over 15,000 artifacts vanished: Sumerian statues, Akkadian seals, clay tablets, some priceless, some irrelevant. Some, the ones Saddam kept locked in the deepest rooms, gone with no signs of forced entry. When U.S. forces finally secured the museum, soldiers walked into a nightmare. Search teams moved through Saddam's palaces. They found gold furniture, hidden bunkers, personal diaries, but not a single one of the mysterious tablets the CIA believed existed. On December 13, 2003, Saddam Hussein was pulled from a dark hole near Tikrit, disheveled, defeated, ready to face justice. But the first interrogations weren't about chemical weapons, not Al-Qaeda, not war plans. The first confidential questions, reported by an FBI interrogator, were chilling. Where are the documents? Where are the tablets? What knowledge were you trying to protect? Saddam denied everything. He laughed, shrugged, pretended not to understand. But when pressed about the Sumerian items seized by his mukhabarat, his eyes changed, guarded, dismissive, almost afraid. He muttered one sentence the interrogator never forgot: "Some things are older than you think." From that moment, American intelligence shifted again. Teams went to bases storing classified materials. They opened sealed containers labeled with undecipherable codes. Inside were broken tablets, cuneiform fragments, dust-covered artifacts, and documents describing excavation missions Saddam ordered. Memos spoke of non-human depictions, prohibited symbolism, and restricted translations.